You've mastered the basics with dimensional 2x4s and 2x10s from the home center, and now you're itching to work with something real, something with character, something with soul. Okay, that's a bit over the top. But I'm talking about hardwood. Where do you even find this stuff? There's a whole world of lumber out there, and it can feel a little intimidating to navigate. Don't worry, in this video, we're taking a road trip to 5 of the best places to buy hardwood from. We'll talk about what to look for, questions to ask, and then compare the actual costs of each location. Also, I need to come clean about something I've been lying about for years. Lying might actually be a little strong. Let's call it misinformed. But I haven't been entirely accurate about one of the locations that we're going to visit today. So we're going full confessional mode. Buckle up. But actually buckle up because we're heading out. Also, it's snowing in South Carolina. What's that all about? So first up is a local lumber dealer. I'm here at Tidewater Lumber, and I would check Google to find places in your area. If you type in hardwood supplier, that will generally point you in the right direction. This is by far the most intimidating place to visit for a number of reasons. First of all, you're likely going to be faced by an overwhelming amount of options that are stacked from floor to ceiling. And in some cases, like one of my other local stores, they don't even label anything, and they often cater to professionals buying large quantities, hence why they aren't open on weekends. Plus, these stores use a special lumber lingo, which means you're going to have to conquer your biggest fear, asking for help. If you're totally cool with telling the staff you're a beginner and have no idea where to start, good for you. I have a weird social anxiety and like to fit in. So if you're like me, here are the cliff notes of their lumber lingo. And the good news is this terminology will carry over to just about all the other locations you buy from, and we cover throughout the video. Boards won't be perfectly flat or smooth on all 4 sides. Some will be rough sawn, meaning none of the 4 sides have been touched, and these came straight off the sawmill. S2S means it has been surfaced on both faces. S3S, which is 2 faces and an edge, or there's S4S like you find at a home center. Rough sawn boards require a planer and a jointer. S2S boards only a jointer before they are ready for use. But most stores will take care of that for you at a nominal charge, and I'll talk more about that later. If you're at a big lumber dealer like this one, just be prepared to wait a couple days for them to get to your order because they cater to professionals, like I said. You'll find wood in a variety of thicknesses, from 1 inch all the way up to 4 inches thick. However, lumber suppliers will refer to those dimensions using the quarter system. 4/4 is 1 inch, 6/4 is 1.5 inches, and 8/4 is 2 inches, so on and so on. I told you, it's all about the lingo. The final thing to be aware of is, unlike home centers where boards are sold by the linear foot, lumber suppliers use a measure of volume called board feet. And board feet is calculated by multiplying the thickness times the width times the length and then dividing by 144. To keep things kosher at each store, I'm buying 8 board feet of 4/4 poplar and 8 board feet of 4/4 sapele so we can compare the costs. Additionally, if the prices are not listed, like here, ask for board foot prices by thickness first. Thicker boards will cost more per board foot than thinner, even in the same species. Plus, it's good to know rough prices while sorting through the stack. One of the things you're going to find at all of the sources, other than home centers, is there's very little consistency in the sizes they stock. For instance, if I were building an 18-inch wide top that's 4 feet long, in a perfect world, they have 3 6-inch wide boards that are 4.5 feet long. But the odds of that are very low. Instead, some of the boards will be more narrow, others are going to be much wider, and at a minimum, they're going to be at least 8 feet long, closer to 10 or 12. So prepare to be flexible and do some on-the-spot math. All right, I need this entire board, but a little less than half of this piece, which is a situation you're likely to run into yourself. And even though you might only need a small portion of a board, they're unlikely to sell you half pieces. But I never worry about this because I like to buy at least 10 to 15% extra for a project and know that I'll likely use anything else in a future build. And when picking up boards, I like to check both sides for any defects or large knots and voids, plus sight down the length to ensure it's reasonably flat. It doesn't need to be perfect because, spoiler alert, wood never is. All right, I'm here with Louie, the owner of Tidewater Lumber, and one of the things that I know is you all feel very intimidated to visit a place like this. I've seen thousands of comments, I've received hundreds of emails. So, Louie, what should someone expect when they visit a location like yours, and what can you say that'll help put their mind more at ease?
Ideally, I think to understand that we do so much in commercial sales, selling to cabinet makers or general contractors or things like that, that our guys are typically busy. So they have to slow down a little bit when a customer comes in and needs more help finding a product. So we've kind of set up some bins full of lumber so they can come in and select out what they want. Sometimes if we're really busy on the commercial side picking orders, it may take a minute to get waited on. You probably get better service on a day like today when it's raining and we're not as crowded, but sometimes it can get busy and we're trying to load trucks or unload trucks and we don't give them that customer service that they may need or want.
So I think the big takeaway is that their primary business is commercial, like Louis said, and you have to have that expectation going in, but that doesn't mean that they don't want your business. Just know these things going in as you go and visit your local lumber dealer. See that? They aren't so mean. And if you're near upstate South Carolina, check out Tidewater Lumber. Time for me to pay and keep on moving. I'm gonna call an audible here and head back to the shop because it is really crappy out. Side note, if you're someone that's looking to get into woodworking and finding the answers to questions like everything that's in this video interests you, I recently released a beginner woodworking course with Chris and Sean that covers all these topics and gives you 4 in-depth builds to complete. The reviews have been awesome so far, and it's been so cool for us to see people that have never even held a power tool before completing these projects. So if that's something that interests you, I'll leave a link below. It's time for me to head home and warm up, but we're still gonna go buy some wood. If you're someone that lives out in the middle of nowhere, far away from lumber yards, sawmills, even big box stores, well, you're in luck because our friend Al Gore invented something called the internet, and all it takes is a couple clicks for Jeff Bezos to deliver wood right to your front door. Actually, Jeff Bezos has nothing to do with this. I don't know why I said his name. There are dozens of online retailers that offer a wide assortment of domestics and imports right at your fingertips. Now, full disclosure, I have never ordered from any of these online retailers before. I'm using Woodworker Source as the example because I see them mentioned in videos all the time and I'm essentially a sheep. Right out of the gate, let's talk about one of the major pros. Like I said, their inventory is extremely wide, including all of your favorite domestics in various lengths and thicknesses, plus imports, even veneers. It's pretty cool. Plus, the website has tons of information that answers all the common questions a beginner would have when selecting lumber. When you're ordering, just about everything appears to be S2S, with the option to pay for an extra straight line rip, which turns the boards into S3S. Something to be aware of that you typically don't see at local dealers or sawmills is the upcharge for wider boards. For instance, this 4/4 red oak starts out at $4.99 for regular random widths. According to the details though, the boards are likely to be 4 to 10 inches wide. However, if you want to guarantee everything is at least 5 inches wide, they ding you for $1 upcharge per board foot. $1.25 for 6 inches, $1.50 for 7 inches. And I don't love that. I mean, I do get it, but it feels a bit like buying a plane ticket on Spirit Airlines that doesn't come with a carry-on. However, on the flip side, I do like that you have so much control over the size of the boards that you receive, especially the minimum and maximum length, which is very rare, almost unheard of at other locations. I will address the shipping costs later in the video when we break down the prices, but it becomes very cost prohibitive to ship anything over 7 feet. So if you need a bunch of big long boards, likely this isn't your best option. Now, I don't want to call this next point a con because it's not, but you obviously don't get to hand select your boards like you would at physical locations. This website says everything is at least 83% clear on one side, which is pretty solid. Plus, it's in their best interest to send actual high quality boards, and from cruising the reviews, most customers seem to be very happy with what they received. All right, my order has been placed, and that took less than 5 minutes, which is super convenient, especially if you don't live anywhere near a lumber yard. I think people tend to undervalue both the time and the travel costs while you're making a long road trip. But while we wait for the order to arrive, it's time to hit up some other more traditional locations. Another location you can source hardwoods from are local sawmills. I'm here at M2 Lumber, and if you've watched the channel before, you might recognize that stash.
Wait, you're actually buying something this time? Wow.
Like your local lumber dealer, a quick Google search should give you the results for the sawmills in your area. Also, a lot of them like to advertise on Facebook Marketplace, but just be sure to do some research and try to stay away from the creepy ones. Right out of the gate, let's talk about some of the things that small mom and stash operations have working against them. And that is that they are local, meaning they can only mill species of trees that grow in their area. Sorry, if you live in a place where walnut trees don't grow, it's difficult to conjure them up. However, in true corporate America interview fashion, where your greatest weakness of working too hard and caring too much is actually your greatest strength, because local mills are only processing trees from nearby, you might find very regional hardwoods like this red mulberry or sweet gum that you wouldn't find at larger suppliers. Plus, the transportation costs are quite low, so prices tend to be some of the best you can find. Now, some of these tend to be fly-by-night operations, and you run the risk of buying wood that isn't actually dry. Now, this is a rabbit hole of a topic, and I'll leave a link below to a video that I did with Matt that covers everything in full detail, but the cliff notes is this. If you're being promised wood that is dry, verify it's actually dry with a moisture meter. Don't just take their word for it. You're targeting 6 to 12% depending on the species, time of year, and where you live. In keeping with the theme of your weaknesses are actually your strengths, the specialty of most sawmills are slabs. And that's because they're cheaper to mill and you don't need a bunch of expensive equipment to turn them into dimensional S2S and S3S like you find at other locations. It's also entirely possible that they only sell slabs. Thankfully, Matt does have that capability here, so I can grab my 4/4 poplar boards that are S2S. But call ahead to verify what they actually have in stock before making a trip, because they will mill whatever they get their hands on. There is no guarantee a particular species will stay in stock. I think the best thing that these small operations have going for them is that the owners and employees of the businesses tend to be extremely friendly and really knowledgeable, and they're willing to help beginners looking for a little extra guidance. But that's enough here at M2. Let's head to our next location, and I think you're going to be really surprised by what we find there. I've made my way over to the local Rockler, but this overview could apply to other woodworking specialty stores in your area. Right out of the gate, one of the major advantages to buying here is it could likely save you from making an extra trip, because these stores stock just about everything you could possibly need for a project. I'm a person that likes to put a value on my own time, and we will cover exact costs later, but if driving an extra 30 minutes in both directions comes at only a nominal cost savings, I'll always pay the upcharge for shorter trips and convenience. In terms of assortment, these stores generally stock all the usual domestic suspects like oak, maple, cherry, ash, and walnut. However, they also carry exotics like padauk, purple heart, wenge, and rosewood. So if you're looking to get your Etsy cutting board on, this is a great spot. They even have smaller cutting board size strips if you don't own milling equipment, but you're paying a premium there. Just about everything here will be S2S or S3S, and since you were paying attention earlier, you know that means two faces have been surfaced or two faces plus an edge. For a beginner, I think that's a really big deal because you can see exactly what the faces look like as opposed to rough sawn, which could be your only option at local mills and lumber yards. Now, in terms of quality, I don't think it's fair to make definitive statements about any locations based on a couple boards I'm looking at in one trip. However, just like my other stops, if you spend a little time sifting through the stacks, you're likely to find some high quality boards and some that were likely picked last on the old kickball team. And the staff here isn't going to give you angry eyes if you want to take some time searching for the perfect board, unlike the lumber yards that cater to professionals. And I think that's a major advantage to specialty stores like this one. The staff here tend to be woodworking junkies and love to nerd out on all things tools and lumber related. Of course, there are some drawbacks. While they do offer a wide variety of domestics and imports, the thicknesses tend to be limited to 4/4 and 8/4, or as you'll see them labeled 15/16 and 1 15/16. And the reason for that is because these are S2S, they want to show you what the actual dimensions are, and it's really the same thicknesses that you're probably getting at a lumber yard. They just like to take the confusion out of it. However, if you're someone like me that works with a lot of 6/4 material, well, you're shit out of luck. Anyone that's purchased or considered buying wood from a Rockler or Woodcraft is likely yelling at the screen right now saying something like, "Talk about how much more expensive it is, you dummy." First of all, I can't hear you. That's not how this works. Second of all, as promised, we will compare all of the prices at the end of the video. But like I said earlier, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. Rockler recently lowered the price of their lumber, and that made them much more competitive. And full disclosure, I likely wouldn't have included them as an option before the price drop. How's that for a good teaser? But while you mull that over, it's time for our next stop. It wouldn't be a woodworking YouTube video if we didn't pay homage to our big box stores. Now, despite these having a really bad reputation online in the community, I've been guilty of telling people that you can find reasonably priced hardwoods here that aren't much more than your standard 2x10 and 2x4. However, I also haven't bought hardwoods here in 8 or so years, so let's go inside and see if everything I've been saying is total BS, which is possible. Apologies for the voiceover here, but apparently no one told the manager his store was not an AC/DC tribute concert. Most big box stores sell extremely limited species. Mine only carries poplar and red oak, that is 3/4 of an inch and S4S. The lengths are a bit all over the place, and you can cut them to size, I think. If you get in trouble for cutting their hardwoods, you didn't hear it from me. The big difference between box stores and lumber yards is box stores sell by the linear foot. linear doesn't account for the thickness like board feet. The calculation is very complex. First, measure the length of your board, and then do nothing else because that is your total linear feet. And their prices per linear foot go up based on the width of the board. To their credit, the assortment doesn't look that bad from afar, and if you spend time sorting through the stack, you can find a couple somewhat flat pieces. Also some bananas. So if you don't own any milling equipment, this could be an option, and if you hate money. All right. That was interesting, and this one's gonna sting. It's never fun admitting that you're wrong. But if you ever heard me mention the words reasonably affordable, big box store, and hardwood in the same sentence, I'm sorry, because those prices are much higher than I remember them being. I'm gonna break it all down later when we get home. But yeah, I'm sorry for all the bad advice over the years. Consider this my olive branch of sorts, but we're gonna head over to a bonus impromptu location that you likely haven't seen before in other videos. Again, I'm sorry. So I'm here at my local Woodworkers Guild. These are also called maker spaces. And generally you're gonna pay a per month fee or by the hour. But one of the benefits of joining a place like this is you get access to all the tools, plus they often sell hardwoods. Mine sells domestics, they sell imports, and they even have sheet goods. Plus the prices tend to be pretty good. So do a quick Google search to see if you have a location like this in your area. But that's enough road tripping for me. Let's get home and assess the damage. All right, I've got everything back home. My online order has arrived. It took 11 days, by the way, but let's crack this box open together and see what we got. At first glance, quality looks really good, and I asked for boards that were at least 48 inches long and no more than 60, and seems like they nailed it. So you're not gonna get any complaints or demerits from me. Like I said earlier in the video though, I don't think it's fair to judge these locations based on one small sample size of boards. However, if I needed to hand out a first place, it would go to this online order. The Sapele especially is super high quality. It's essentially dead flat. I checked it with a straight edge, so all you need to do is joint an edge, rip it, and you're ready to go. But let's talk about the pricing for all locations and my recommendations on where you should buy from. As a reminder, I bought 8 board feet of 4/4 poplar from all locations and 8 board feet of 4/4 Sapele from a lumber dealer, Rockler, and online only because the other locations don't carry imports. But let's start with the Sapele. At the local lumber yard, I paid $9.26 per board foot, totaling $74.08. At Rockler, $11.99. If you're math averse like me, that's $95.92. Maybe Rockler is in cahoots with Woodworker Source because their price was also $11.99 or $95.92, which means the local supplier is around 30% less than the other two. Not terribly surprising if you ask me. However, there is more to this love triangle because you need to pay Al Gore and Jeff Bezos to deliver from Woodworker Source via FedEx. Now I'm on the opposite side of the country, which totals $29 in freight, bringing the board foot price for the Sapele of this order to $15.61 for a grand total of $124.92, roughly 68% more than our cheapest option. Now, obviously shipping rates are going to vary depending on where you're located. This is just one man's experience. On to the fun stuff, because nothing screams excitement like 4/4 poplar. At Rockler, I paid $4.49 a board foot for $35.92 total. Matt at M2 finally got me to buy something. Thankfully, it was only at a price of $2.99 or $23.92, just barely more than Tidewater, which was $2.87 per board foot, totaling $22.96. Now the real fun. Woodworker Source sells poplar for $4.99, which was $35.92. However, with shipping, that brought the board foot price up to $8.61 for a grand total of $68.88. And that is a tough pill to swallow. But it is nothing compared to our friends at the Big Orange. I bought 2 6-foot-long boards that were 7 1/4 inches wide and 3/4 of an inch thick. Now before I give you the number, I want to reiterate that Home Depot sells by the linear foot. So they don't care about this board being thinner than just about everything else that we purchased. Only the length. Their linear foot price of $5.18 doesn't sound so bad. However, it's a bit like a car dealer selling you on the monthly payment instead of the actual price. I mean, who cares if it's 84 months at 15.5%? But I digress. I paid $62.16 for those 2 boards, but if we're comparing apples to apples, that 12 linear feet of wood is less than 5.5 board feet, which would convert to $11.43 a board foot. Yes, $11.43. It is S4S, but it's still more than I pay for walnut, And yet, it's 3/4 of an inch poplar that, let me show you, it isn't even flat, okay? After you're done milling this thing, you are likely left with a potato chip. Which leads us onto my thoughts on where to buy hardwoods. If you're in a pinch and you live far away from lumber dealers, you have no internet access, and there's a zombie apocalypse incoming, yes, go to a big box store. For non-mass human extinction level events, here's my recommendations though. Best case scenario, you have a lumber dealer nearby that is reasonably friendly and isn't going to run you off because they have a nice wide assortment of the meat and potato species in stock in dimensional sizes. And I think it's a low barrier to entry. If you consider yourself a person that needs more time and likes to ask a bunch of questions, or you're in search of slabs, local sawmills all the way. It's one of my favorite places. But if you're already going to a specialty store like Rockler and you're not buying a ton of wood, I think it's a viable option, but likely not going to purchase 50 board feet of anything there. And finally, if you live in the middle of nowhere, or you're just really lazy and don't mind paying a premium to have something really nice delivered to your doorstep, I think that the online dealers are your best bet. I hope all this helps. I apologize for all the previous bad advice. Hopefully we can still be friends. I've got a lot of wood to go build something with. We'll see ya.